Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first class. We are going to start with some very basic bash commands in order to get the skills we'll need to navigate the server later or navigate on your computer. I'm going to start here on our GitHub site where we're going to go to class 2023. You just go to boulderrinlab.github. And we'll click on class 2023. And I'll show you how to clone this or fork this repository later in our first Git lecture on the website. You can click the Git button if you want to do that first. And we'll go to classes, and we see O1 is our first sort of section on bash. And we'll click there, and we're going to start with O1 bashing around. So if you click here, this is all the code for the class for today. Again, just some real basic fundamental bash commands we're going to need to know for the rest of the class. So you can follow along here, or I'm going to do it from here from RStudio. But you can also check out in the class syllabus how to set up an iTerminal or any sort of terminal on your computer, and you can follow along using the same code there. So this is, again, the same code that's on the GitHub website, and we're going to start with our first command of changing to the directory in which the class is hosted. So eventually you will fork or clone this class. It'll have all the class materials in it, and navigate to that. So to do that, we use the cd command or change directory. So we can just do that as our first command here. I'm down here and hit enter. And then we can see what is in there by using ls for list. And we see each student will have a directory in here. Mine is JR. Student X can go in there, and we could do cd again into JR and list, and we'll see the class 2023, cd into there, and list again, and we can see that all the classes where we just were are in there. So that is a first start in how to move in directories, and you can type the actual path like we did here. I'm going to go back to this here. And we can also see where we are by doing pwd, which is path to working directory. We can do that. We can see where we are, and then later we could copy and paste that and cd right back into it. So we've seen change directory, lists, and working pathway. List has more to it. We can see here that we see the 3 directories that are in here. I'm going to switch into mine real quick and go into class 2023, classes, O1, bash. And I'm going to do list, and I can see the classes that are involved with bash. And I can also do list with a flag. So the dash here is called a flag, and do LAH here, and hit enter, and what we get is a bunch more information, including hidden directories that will start with a dot, or hidden files that start with a dot, shown here. So, all right, we're already moving along here. So let's make a new folder. Okay, I'm gonna check where I am and do a list. And now I'm gonna make a new folder, and we'll call this one name of directory. So to do that, we use the command make directory, mkdir, name, and then the name of the directory, and that's what the name will actually now be called. So we click that, and now if we list again, we see a new directory here, name of directory, and we could cd into that. Let's do that. And if you hit tab, it'll know the name of the rest of the path if it's a unique path. So we've now moved into there with cd. And what's also nice is there's a manual for every one of these commands. So if we want to see how make directory works or what it's all about, we can do man for manual and then the command name make directory. And we get all of this information here. So we can have it verbose, who it's written by, not the most useful manual, but you'll often find yourself going to the manual to get more information and different parameters or these flags we just used with list for like list -LAH. And there's other sort of little tweaks you can do here. And to get out of here, we just type Q to quit for quit. And we're back to our directory. Okay, so we've made a directory. Now let's make a file using the command touch. So if you do touch test.txt, and now we do a list, we can see there's a file called test.txt. Now, if we want to edit something and put something in there, the editor we'll be using in this class is Nano. It's very simple, very basic. There's more complex ones that you can use, like Emacs and Vim, but we will just be using Nano. So let's go into test.txt using the Nano command, which pulls up this text editor in here. And so now we have this kind of blank document. And so I'm going to type in here, as the class says, whatever. So let's type in whatever. And then to get out of this, we do Control X, and it's going to ask if we want to save our changes, and we'll say yes, and then enter, and we're back. And so now if we want to look at what's in there, we can use the command cat for concatenate. So it's going to print the entire file. We'll do head and tail in a minute, where it prints the top and bottom lines respectively. But so let's cat test.txt, and we can see the text that's in there, whatever. We could also just look, if it was a much longer document, we could use head test.txt, and it defaults to about 10 lines. We only have one line, so it's only going to show the one, but you can actually tell it with head dash the number. So let's say 20 lines of test.txt. And we can see there's just one line. But if it's a big long file, which we'll see in a little bit, or in the next class, this would become kind of handy to just check the top of the file. What are the column names, et cetera? What type of format is the file in, et cetera, is where head, tail, which tail just does the bottom lines. We'll do tail 10, and it's just still the one line. But again, so if you want to see the bottom of the file, tail, top of the file, head, the whole file, cat. Okay, moving on. Now, let's say we don't want that file anymore. So let's do a list here, and we want to remove test.txt. So we use the command rm, or remove, and we just type in the name of the file we want gone. And now when we list, there's no file left. So be careful, there's no Control Z or undo in Bash. And so whenever you do that, it's gone for good. Okay, so we've now removed it. Let's make a new file, another one. So let's just go straight to Nano, which will name the file what we call it on the first try. So nano test.txt, we're going to type in whatever, and make this a few lines longer so we can use head and tail. Okay, so there's our new file. Control X, yes, for Y for yes, and enter. And we're back here. We list and we see we have test.txt. Now let's say you want to merge two files together. We can use that cat command we used to print out the entire file, but can also be used to merge two files. So let's make a new file called test2.txt. And we're going to type in, let's see where this text ends up when we merge. Okay, so now Control X, save it, yes, enter, and I'm back. And now what I can do is I can concatenate these two files and use the output command is what we're going to learn here. So we can use cat for the first file is test.txt, and then the next file is test2.txt with a space between them. And then we're going to use this forward arrow for output. And that means that we can make a new file from these two files. And we'll call it test3.txt and do enter. And now let's see what we got with test3.txt. And we can see that what it did is it added the text from test.2 or test2 to the bottom of test or test.txt. So that's pretty handy when you have different large files and you just want to merge them together. You can use cat, and this output command is really powerful to print it out, is what this is telling bash to print this out into this new file here. So you don't write over your previous files. Okay, so now let's say we want to make a new directory. We've been working on something. We found that we're making too many files. We're going to make a new directory in here. So let's see what we have so far is these 3 files. And let's make a new directory with the make directory command called practice down here. Okay, so now if we list, we have this practice folder. And what we can do next is move these text files into that directory using the move command, MV. Now there's the CP command, which we'll do in a second, which copies the file, and move is just going to change the file path to it. So it's a very quick thing. No extra data is generated. No storage is increased. With CP, you do duplicate the size of the file. So that becomes important when we're using genomic data. You don't want to always just copy. Sometimes you just want to move it, which changes the file path, but not the content of the file. So let's move test.txt to practice. So you just type in the next thing is the directory it wants to go to. And then if we list, we see we're missing that one. We can move test2.txt to practice. And see, now we're just left with test3, and we can move test3.txt to practice. And we have nothing left but practice, and we can cd or change directory into practice, do a list, LAH for long and human readable, long all and human readable, and we can see our files. And we can check where we are now since we've moved around a lot, and that's the directory we're currently in. Okay, so we could use CP the same way. And so let's move, another thing we can do is move test2.txt up a directory by using .. // So that will tell it to move it up just one directory from here. And now if we list, it's gone. And if we go cd ... then we'll go up a directory as well. And now if we list, we can see test2 has been moved here. And we can check where that is. And it's a name of directory where we made the practice folder. Okay, so now what we're going to do is copy test2 into practice using CP, and then put it into practice. And what we'll see now, we still have test2 here. And if we go into practice, then we see that there's also a test2 in there. So we've duplicated the file using CP, and MV just moves it to that file path that you specified. Okay, so that was kind of cumbersome to have to move each one of them as we did individually. So what we can learn next is the wildcard here, which is like an asterisk, which means anything before that and then match the following string. So in our case, all of these files have .txt in them, and we can move them all at once using star.txt to the directory up above. And now if we list, there's nothing in here. We change directories one up by the double dot. And if we do a list here, we can see now they're all there. And we could do the same thing with copy. Any function we do in bash, if you use a wildcard, it's going to say, I can match anything up until this point, and then tell me what you want to match it to. So that helps with like files that we're going to be using, like fastq files and peak files. They all have the same last suffix, so we can move them all at once using that wildcard command. Okay, so one thing we can do is I'm going to skip over making a symlink. There is a code here on line 187 showing you how to do that. I don't highly recommend it because when you then do PWD, you just go back to where that symlink is. However, if you're typing in long file paths like this one, sometimes it's more handy. I prefer not to, but it's in here if you want. Okay, so now let's say we want to go home to our home directory. So there's a way to do that, which is we saw cd ... to go up. And if you want to go up two directories, you can do cd ... // and so on. Oops. And you will get to however many directories up you tell it. We can also do cd ~/ and that brings you to your home directory. And so now if we see where we are, I can see I'm in a different directory altogether, and have gone actually to my home directory on VG. This might be the home directory on your computer. I am just going to quickly copy this back where we want to go. And so I'm going to go back to class here. So I just went to my home directory. Oops. Oh, let's just do that. Okay. And then we'll list and we'll go into my folder, and we'll go into class 2023 and then classes 01 bash. Okay. Now let's say we want to see how big this directory is. So we're now back to line 209 here, using du for disk usage. So what we can see is how big this data directory is, or let's do name of directory since that's one we made in this class. du.sh just stands for human readable, so it'll do it in megabytes instead of bytes. It's a flag I would recommend using every time you do that. So if you want to see how much space your whole computer is using, you can go to your home directory. That might take a while, so I'm just going to do this name of directory folder, and we can see it's 2.0K, and then the name of the directory. If we go up one and list, we can see there's a bunch of classes here, and let's do du.sh01 bash. And we can see it's 1.1 megabytes. Okay, so I'm going to go back into bash, and there's our classes. This is the class we're on now, and that'll be the next class. Okay, so one of the last things I want to do is the pipe. This is awesome. It sort of allows you to make a code in bash to say, do this command, then this command, then that command. So you can think of the pipe as sending information across the pipe to the next command. And where we'll use that a lot is to say, like, let's say we want to know how long. Let's go back into our name of directory folder and then practice. And we moved the files up one, so they're here. And let's say we want to see how many lines there are in a file. This often tells you if you've run some code, if the file got bigger, or if it didn't, then you can sort of troubleshoot it this way. And so for that, we'll do our command list. And the pipe is just the straight line here. And WC is for word count and -L for lines. So we'll just learn a bunch of commands in one go here. So what's going to happen is we're going to list the files, and then we're going to see how many lines there are. And what we can see is there's 4 things in this directory. So practice, test2, test3, and test. So that is often really handy if you want to, let's say we're going to cat test3, which has the most amount of text in it. And then we want to see how many lines are in that file. We can do the same kind of thing here. We can see there's 17 lines in that file. So if we do head test3, we're going to see just the first few lines. And so we won't see the rest of it. And if we did head dash, let's say 3, then we will only get the first 3 lines of that file. So piping like cat test3 text and then putting a pipe to word count dash lines is a very common and useful way to sort of navigate a file. All right, well, that is it for our first initial steps into Bash. We're going to need this to move around to folders in the class and checking on files as we run analyses on them. And I will see you for the next class, O2 Bash, where we're going to get into some of the more complex functions such as grep, awk, and you start using some chip data to see why you would use Bash in genomic analyses. Until then, I wish you a good time.